Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm Anne-Marie Green.
And I'm Vladimir Duterte. We begin this hour in Washington, where members of the special counsel's team say they're frustrated by Attorney General William Barr for allegedly mischaracterizing the findings of Robert Mueller's Russia report. On the front page of today's New York Times, some of Mueller's investigators say the Attorney General, quote, failed to adequately portray the findings of their inquiry and that they were more troubling for President Trump than Mr. Barr indicated. Yesterday, House Democrats approved subpoenas for Mueller's report in full. They're calling for the Justice Department to let them see it without redactions.
Meanwhile, House Ways and Means Chairman Richard Neal initiated a process that could take years to play out concerning the president's taxes. He sent a formal request to the IRS yesterday asking to see tax returns going back several years. By April 10th, Donald Trump is the first president in 40 years not to make his tax returns public. Now, the move is expected to draw a legal challenge from his administration. And Paula Reid has more on how the White House is responding to it.
Until such time as I'm not under audit, I would not be inclined to do that.
There is no policy that prevents anyone from releasing their tax returns while under audit, but the president repeated this false claim when asked about House Democrats demanding his returns.
I've been under audit for many years because the numbers are big, and I guess when you have a name, you're audited.
In a letter to the IRS, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal relies on a little-known tax law to support his request for 6 years of the president's tax returns, as well as returns from 8 other Trump entities. Neal insists the request is about policy, not politics, but not everyone agrees.
This is not oversight. This is overreach. And because they can't indict and impeach him, they want to embarrass and harass him and those around him. And America sees it for what it is.
Meanwhile, the House Judiciary Committee now has a subpoena for the full Mueller report.
It is imperative that the committee take possession of these documents and others without delay.
Overnight, both the New York Times and the Washington Post reported some in the special counsel's team are unhappy with Attorney General William Barr's summary. Democrats were quick to seize on those reports to bolster their claims that Barr should release more.
Why didn't he release a summary produced by Bob Mueller himself instead of trying to shape it through his own words?
The reports were not attributed to special counsel team members, but the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, still blasted Mueller's team over the latest reports.
It makes the point that we've been making for 2 years, despite all of the media reports about how holy and sanctimonious the Mueller team is. They're a bunch of sneaky, unethical leakers.
For more on this, we are joined by CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid at the White House. So, Paula, in one day, House Democrats demanded President Trump's tax returns for 6 years, moved to get a decade's worth of his financial records, and prepared to issue a subpoena for the full Mueller report from the Justice Department. But let us start with the taxes. How likely is it that the IRS will comply with this request?
That's right. This request for the personal tax returns comes amid this overall escalation of investigations into all things Trump. Now, specifically, when it comes to the tax returns, Chairman Neal based this request. If you read his letter, he based it on this obscure provision in the tax code that requires the IRS to audit the vice president and the president every year. And in his request, he says that his committee is considering legislation on this issue, but needs to assess how well this provision is working, and therefore they need the president's tax returns. Now, legally speaking, we're in uncharted waters here, but it does appear that he has a pretty solid case, and the IRS may be forced to turn over these tax returns. But again, they're not making them public. They're only turning them over to the committee, and it is likely that the chairman and perhaps 1 or 2 other people will be the only ones who actually get to see them.
So you actually asked White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders about this moments ago. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
What I can tell you is the president's filled out hundreds of pages of a financial disclosure form, which puts all of his business dealings in that, like every other member of government has to do. And it gives you a great look at the president's financial holdings, his business, and how successful he was over the lifetime.
So listen, is there anything that the Trump administration can do legally to prevent the IRS from delivering those tax returns?
we should fully expect that they will launch a legal challenge against this pursuit, but it's not clear what their argument would be. The president tries to say in public, well, I'm under audit, I can't release them. And when people sort of called him out on the fact that, yes, you can, there's no policy preventing you from doing that, now he just sort of relies on the argument that I don't want to do it. He's even said, look, they're too complicated for the average person to understand. None of those are compelling legal arguments. And what I asked Sarah Huckabee Sanders a short time ago was whether or not she could confirm that there was no evidence of criminal activity in these returns. Because now we have the president's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, testifying under oath, where he was not always honest, but he did suggest that the president had committed tax fraud. And so there are these questions now. Well, your former personal attorney saying you committed tax fraud, you refuse to release your returns. My question to her was, if they do not prevail on legal challenges, if they can't block this, could this potentially open up new legal problems for the president? She said she was, as you heard, not aware of any criminal activity.
You know, I find it curious that the president for 2 years has called the special counsel's investigation a witch hunt, but for some reason he doesn't seem to indicate that the IRS is on kind of a witch hunt because he's been on an audit for all these years. You would think he would take to his Twitter feed and say, you know, what's going on with these guys? Why am I still under audit after all these years?
I also wondered if there was anyone who could sort of just ask for the audit to be halted.
That's right.
Like, can the Treasury Department go, okay, you know what, let's just stop auditing for a second
For a second and see what
now
happens.
You can have your tax returns.
But meanwhile, Paula, let's move on to this other news. This is just my rumination here. But the front page of the New York Times, quoting, some on Mueller's team say report was more damaging than Barr revealed. They are accusing the Attorney General, William Barr, of misrepresenting the findings of the special counsel's report. What specifically do these investigators disagree with what is in Barr's summary?
Look, we have to couch these reports. These are based on anonymous sources who spoke with members of the special counsel's team. The special counsel investigation has been notoriously leak-proof. CBS has not been able to corroborate these claims with members of the special counsel's team. But it should not come as a surprise that when you have a 400-page report that is the summation of a team of people's life work for 2 years, that a 4-page summary leaves many people unsatisfied. They know that is not terribly surprising. But right now, the Attorney General is working on a longer summary. He wants to release additional information. But I think right now, Democrats are very upset about the narrative that they believe the Attorney General started, which is no collusion, kind of squishy on obstruction. They believe there's a lot more to this. So you saw them seizing on these reports from the New York Times, the Washington Post last night, saying, look, I told you Barr withheld information. Fact is, we're all just waiting for a more extensive report to come out. It's unlikely anyone is ever going to be satisfied by a 4-page summary.
Have we heard anything from the Justice Department in response to this report?
No, I was there yesterday walking the halls. They are busy preparing the Attorney General for some hearings that he has next week on the Hill, which should be real interesting. They're supposed to be on appropriations and his budget. They will likely focus extensively on the Mueller report. They're also trying to prepare this redacted version. They have to go through all of this information and decide what they can withhold, what they can't. They're focused on that. They have not been responding, though, to these reports out of the Post or the Times.
All right, Paula, thank you very much. We appreciate it as always.